Since it is now 5:30 and I see we have more folks who've joined, I think we can get started with our logistics slides and setting up interpretation. So for the instructions, I'm going to pass it to Diana from Lingüística. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por estar en la reunión del día de hoy. Vamos a dar las instrucciones de interpretación. Para las personas que están conectándose desde su computadora, en la parte de abajo del menú de Zoom van a ver un icono que parece un globo o un mundo que dice interpretación. Tenemos que seleccionar esa opción y luego seleccionar la opción que dice español y silenciar el audio original si es que no desean escuchar dos voces a la vez. Si es que están conectándose desde su dispositivo móvil o desde una tableta, tienen que buscar la opción que dice más o more, los tres puntitos. Subimos y buscamos la opción que dice interpretación de idiomas o language interpretation. Seleccionamos nuevamente la opción de español y silenciar el audio original. Y al final tenemos que seleccionar la opción que dice finalizado, terminado o listo. Si tienen alguna dificultad para unirse al canal de interpretación, nos lo pueden hacer saber por el chat para poder ayudarles. Ahora voy a dar las mismas indicaciones, pero en inglés. Hello everyone. Today we'll have interpretation available for those who need it. If you're an English speaker and you're joining from a computer, at the bottom of the Zoom menu, you will see a word-like icon that says interpretation. You can select that and then you will select English. And if you're joining from a tablet or your phone, you will have to tap your screen and look for the three dots that says more. And you will also look for the option that says language interpretation. You will select English. And at the end, the option that says finish or done. If you have any issues, please let us know in the chat so we can help you. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you, Diana. I will just pause for a moment as Amy adds Diana to the interpretation channel and finishes setting that up. Once I get a thumbs up, I will continue us on, but just want to make sure everyone is in the proper interpretation channel. Okay. Looks like our interpretation is on. And just as a reminder, as Diana mentioned, if you are having any issues with interpretation, if you are unable to hear the meeting at any point, we do ask that you interrupt us, unmute, raise your hand, or put it in the chat that you are having difficulties, and we will pause the meeting to make sure that all the technological issues are resolved and everybody is able to participate. So please don't hesitate to let us know if you are having any issues. On this slide, we have a reminder for our naming conventions. For our CSC members, I'm sure you're very used to this. We ask that you put the letters CSC in your Zoom name. And for residents, we ask that you put the letter R. And again, this is very helpful for our attendance tracking and stipend distribution processes. For all other participants in tonight's meeting, if you are joining as part of an agency, we ask that you add that agency in your Zoom name as well. And if you are joining as a member of the public, we ask that you designate that by adding the letter P in your Zoom name. And we will invite you into the conversation throughout and at designated public comment points. Just another reminder here for our virtual meeting etiquette. We do ask that everybody stays muted unless you are speaking. And a reminder for those who are calling in on the phone, you can mute and unmute by pressing *6. We also ask for everybody to raise your Zoom hand if you have a question or comment during tonight's presentations. And for those calling in on the phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. And one final reminder for our residents in the stipend program to please stay on for at least 75% of tonight's meeting. which is around 90 minutes to be eligible for the stipend. On this slide, we have a reminder of our group agreements. Everybody here has agreed to help achieve our meeting goals by focusing on solutions, opportunities, and productive dialogue. A reminder that it is okay to attack the problem and not the person. And really, we are just trying to honor everybody's humanity and dignity. A key theme here is that we are all trying to seek common ground. Building consensus and finding shared values will help us all achieve the best results. On this slide here, we have our agenda for tonight. It looks pretty packed, so we do have quite a lot that we would like to get through. First, we'll have our usual welcome and some introductions before we move to our SERP implementation progress update. Then we will have our quarterly air monitoring update, and then an annual report update before we move on to our usual standing updates where we hear from agencies. And then we will close out our meeting by discussing some next steps and agenda setting before we end with our final public comment. So I will stop sharing my screen and just want to welcome everybody again to the 75th Fresno Steering Committee meeting. I know it is dark outside and can be difficult to make some time for these meetings after a very busy day. So just want to thank you all and express our appreciation for those who continue to show up and engage in these meetings. At this time, I am happy to invite Ryan to share some opening remarks for everybody.
Thanks, Liz. Great to be here tonight with all of you, and happy to see a lot of familiar faces. And definitely we also want to share our appreciation and thanks for continuing to be here and participating and providing comments and feedbacks and thoughts and opinions. It is so valuable and important. I feel very lucky today. This is my second opportunity to engage with community members, and just reminds me why this work is so important, and what a tremendous job all of you have done in helping to shape and form this program. So look forward to that continued good work. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. This is Liz. And so at this point, I'm going to transition us to our first agenda item, which is the SERP implementation progress update. Just wanted to share some brief context that this presentation will be an overview for you all of the recent progress made on your SERP, with a focus on the remaining measures that will require some input from the CSC. And you'll see in a moment, and Ryan will explain these various categorizations of the SERP measures to help guide this discussion. But we want to express to folks that the Air District is, of course, still open to feedback on whether these categories feel right to you all as the CSC. And also, we're going to make space to hear feedback from you on potential decisions to reallocate some funds. Tonight is not necessarily about making decisions right in this moment, and instead this is more of a presentation that will help ensure that the CSC will get all of the information they need, all of your questions answered, so that you can feel informed and ready to make any reallocation decisions if necessary. So at this time, I'm going to pass it back to you, Ryan, to share some more context and get going on this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I'll jump right into it. So let me share my screen. Okay, hopefully everybody can see the first slide, SERP implementation updates.
Yes.
Some nodding heads, that's excellent. I'll do a personal reminder to myself to speak slowly for the interpreters, to make sure I do a good job so that way nothing is missed by anyone. Now I just need to follow my advice or my feedback to myself. So kind of as a reminder to everybody, there are several measures that in working together, we were able to put funding towards and complete some of the measures. So some of the things like alternative fueling stations, electric school buses, vegetated barriers, heavy-duty truck reroute study, heavy-duty trucks, and urban greening. When we say that the measures were completed, it's only from a fiscal standpoint. We understand that there's a lot more that goes into that beyond just the dollars and cents, but for this discussion, it's just in regards to the dollars and cents. So for those measures, the funding was allocated or was expended in accordance with what was proposed in the South Central Community Emission Reduction Program. So it's just some of the numbers of what those dollars were. There was $500,000 for the heavy duty truck rerouting, $1 million for vegetated barriers, $2 million for alt fueling infrastructure, $2.2 million for urban greening, $6.4 million for electric school buses. And that last one should say heavy duty trucks. So forgive me, I missed that. Not for the rerouting of the trucks. That was for the trucks themselves. So in this presentation, by no means are we asking for definitive, like absolute feedback today. We're going to be proposing some things in kind of looking at where we were with spending in some of the categories, and then trying to kind of work with what's going on in the rest of the country and some of the decisions that were made at the federal level and how that impacted some of the expected emission reductions that were going to happen in California specifically. I'll go into a little bit more detail, but there were several rules and regulations in place that the California Air Resources Board had in regards to the semi-truck fleet transition to near zero emission. The federal government took some actions and removed some of those requirements. And so CARB is doing extensive research into what that means for in terms of throughout the state, what impact that has in expected emission reductions versus what we are actually going to see now for those regulations. And so it is going to have a big impact. We're very appreciative of the California Air Resources Board. They're making commitments to work with us and the federal government we have to go back now and we have to update some of the state implementation plans, which are basically the outline and the plan for how areas that are not meeting national and state ambient air quality standards, the amount of pollution that can be in the air at any given time, and how we're going to go back and now kind of relook at what's available and try to get those emission reductions so that way we are still on that path to that chart for clean air for all Valley residents and residents throughout the state. So what we have here and I'll go over it so in category 1, there's several measures, especially resident focused measures that we still have funding. We worked with you on doing some reallocations. And so we want to continue to do that work through 2027. There's another category where we're not seeing as much participation, and some of it has to do with just that kind of uncertainty that I was talking about. A lot of the things that we had committed large amounts of funding towards because there was just a large amount of emission reductions associated with individual categories. But due to some uncertainty, I think there's probably some opportunity, especially in looking in the near term. This program is always meant to try to get a significant amount of reduction in emissions as relatively quickly as possible. And so just understanding that some of the heavy duty trucking sector is going to be impacted by this, and people's desire and plans for transitioning have now changed, and so there's just a lot of uncertainty in that category. And, at the same time, we have, spending deadlines to expend these funds. And so, we want to talk to you about what maybe some opportunities for getting, while maybe not the exact same amount of emission reductions, but, a considerable amount. And that's in category 2. And then category 3, for measures with evidence of interest and need, add funding from category 2. So that's kind of what I was talking about before. And like I said, we are not asking for definitives, yes, no, during this meeting. We really want to talk about concepts. We wanted to talk about just some of the challenges with the uncertainties of what's going on and how that, the real world impacts that it's having on the implementation of the South Central Fresno Community Emissions Reduction Program. Does anybody have any questions before I go on to the next slide? Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. So these are the residential ones that we want to continue to work with you on funding. So we're seeing good participation in the passenger vehicle replacement, and thanks to you, you've done several reallocations. And so right now we have roughly a little less than $4 million in that category. But based on the rates at which we're spending that money right now, we don't see any issues with getting that spent in the next little over a year. We have about $427,000 left in residential air filtration. We brought a lot of presentations to the committee talking about where we are in terms of doing outreach, and we took some really great feedback from the community members. We did mailers to people and other things, and we saw a nice size uptick in it. We still have quite a bit of funding, and I'll talk about that program a little bit more in the presentation. Residential vehicle repair, we have about $840,000. I mentioned that I was at a meeting earlier today. It wasn't in Fresno, but just hearing from residents in the Modesto area and just how important this program is. I heard from so many people about their cars not passing smog, and just with everything else and not being able to afford everyday things, that how much a program like this, where you can get your car fixed and then can be able to continue to drive it on the road without the fear of getting pulled over and then possibly having your mode of transportation taken away. So it's a really important program. So we definitely see a lot of opportunity with continuing that. Replacement of wood burning devices, we have $1.5 million remaining in there. Collectively, we work together to increase the incentive amounts that we offer. Some of the feedback that we had gotten was it wasn't enough to pay for it, and so we increased that to a level where we think it would pay for all, if not the majority of it. And we have seen some increases in there. There's also an electric heat pump option. I was talking on a personal level. I grew up in a house with no insulation in the house. It was always freezing in the winter, and we had 2 open hearth fireplaces, and that those more than anything else, I think, cooled off our house. All the hot air, if there ever was any hot air in the house, it would just go right up out that open hearth fireplace. And so, in the last couple of years, my mother went through the program and replaced it and put in an insert. And even without using it, just by sealing that off and not having the hot air leaving that, just a huge noticeable difference in how much warmer her house is. So there's those other benefits in addition to not just burning wood in the fireplace. And so the last one's yard trucks and truck refrigeration units. We have been doing outreach, and we feel like there are some businesses that are interested in using that funding, and so we're recommending to leave it in there. These are ones that do get considerable emission reductions. These are transitioning to near zero emissions, getting rid of diesel particulate matter emissions, and so there's a big benefit for the use of those funds. So as I said, the majority of the measures in category 1 are residential. The programs are going well. Some of them opened, just a few years ago. So it would benefit from the additional time for people to continue to apply. Benefits, greatly from the outreach that you're doing, the community events that we hear about from the community steering committee members. And every time we hear about something, we go out, we're very fortunate in being able to get people signed up. And so they are very effective. So once again, we just want to continue to kind of focus on these at least through February 2027, working with all of you and our community-based organizations and the CSC to continue to do the outreach on those measures. Is there any questions, comments on those? That was mainly to give me an opportunity to take a drink of water. I'm a little parched. So opportunities for clean air rooms, and this is, I think, a good opportunity to use science and technology to help us. We're doing a lot of this in kind of evaluating opportunities to get units out to people that need them. You'll see a lot. So this is a heat map. And basically, the more yellow you see transitioning to kind of that purplish color shows how much participation in the program, like based on kind of density metrics. The more yellow means more units, more air filtration units have gone in those areas. And we could send out some more detailed maps to the steering committee so you can look at them and see if there's any, of any events or other things in those areas that would benefit to get more units out in those areas. So when we're looking at it, one of the things that we see is in terms of residential areas, for the most part, you're seeing, whether it's, purple and we still like more in those areas, or, it's yellow and means like we're doing great. We're getting a lot of people interested. For the residential areas, we're seeing participation. That's the main thing. So it's broad-based in the majority of where people are living. We're seeing them apply for the program and use the program. So that's great news. Now, I would love to see the purple areas go to yellow through our collective efforts. And there's still some pockets in here where there are residents and we don't have people applying. And so we're using this to try to think of how we can do more targeted outreach to those areas and get people participating. So just kind of the areas you saw Malaga in the previous slide. It's in the bottom right there. You see a nice yellow there. That means it's getting utilized. But then as you kind of move away to the kind of the out, it starts turning purple. So there's still some opportunities in that area. And then West Fresno, we're seeing more purple in West Fresno, and we'd like to see more yellow. And so hopefully as an action item tonight, once again, we'll send this out to people. Please share, look at the maps, see if you know of any, school outreach events, anything else where, we can go. I see Lilia has her hands up. She always got great recommendations on community events. But yeah, Lilia.
Buenas. Sí, tengo mirando
Yes,
que
I was just looking those slides that you're sharing on the screen. We don't have them, correct?
I don't believe we got these mailed out. That's correct.
Sí, porque estoy revisando.
Yes, because I'm checking what I got and I'm looking for them and I couldn't find them. Could you send them so we can just look at them closely? And that's one thing. And for the community events, I'm informing you about the events that we're having. Tomorrow we're going to have one in the school. I already told you. And it's going to be literature night and math night. So we're inviting the whole community to participate in this event. And we also have the 20th of this month is going to be literature and math. Where we are inviting the whole community. So I think it'll be good. I have some information that you have given me, so we are going to share it with you. We have just a little bit of information. So whatever I have, I'm going to share it tomorrow, but I'm going to be using a little more material for the next 20th of this month on Winter School. So I would like to have more information so that I can share with the community if you're not able to do it, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you send out, we will be sure to share out with the rest of the steering committee. And Anna Stone from our outreach team has given me a thumbs up that we have the Bang Pow event confirmed and that we'll be there in attendance, and we look forward to it.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lilia. So yeah, we will. So as opposed to the slides, Lilia, we'll also send you the actual kind of map, and so you can kind of zoom in and see that the areas where we don't have as much participation in the program. So category 2, there's an opportunity to look at reallocating funds. I know it says reallocate funds, and it seems like we are saying like, yeah, let's do it, let's move forward. But once again, this is just a kind of a beginning discussion, conversation about, if we were to consider this, what this may look like, what could we do to get, hopefully an equivalent level of emission reductions. Because that's what this program's about, is hopefully in addition to mitigating impacts from air pollution, also getting the emission reductions themselves. And so 3 of the items on here are 3 of some of the biggest emission reductions in terms of things under in terms of equipment change out that would get emission reductions. And oftentimes these pieces of equipment have huge engines in them. They operate for long periods of time. And so there's a lot of emission reductions associated with that. Due to a host of factors, I think there's been challenges with things like rail car movers and switchers. And kind of taking an inventory, we're not seeing as much as we initially thought there was. We were able to get a few transition, but not the level and interest that we need in order to expend those funds right now. The other one was locomotives. And it's the same kind of thing. Locomotives, we kind of made that earlier commitment to look to kind of reallocate those funds, understanding that most of that was long haul, and those emission reductions wouldn't be as focused in the South Central community. So that was another one. Charging plugs for trucks. This was a great, kind of going back to the early adoption to some of the electric, like trucks. Over time, we're seeing less and less of it. There was like problems with these types of devices and not a lot of usage of them in the end. And so I think there's probably an opportunity to reallocate that $100,000 to something where we'll see more benefit. I know this last one is, it seems like we're not interested in EV mechanic training by talking about reallocating the 75,000. It has more to do with the great success that we've seen from the state college program. Kind of going back to when we were initially talking about this, we had several meetings with Fresno City College, and especially the newer West Campus, and from that feedback, they have the program is up and running. There's opportunity. Anybody can participate. City College, for the most part, is free to students. And so we'd ask them, like, was there some opportunity to work with them to use that funding? And at the time, they didn't see an opportunity. And so that's the only reason why we're kind of proposing it here. We do want to bring the community college to a future meeting and talk about that program and how it's working, and to provide you that information so that way you can share it out with community members and people that are maybe thinking about careers beyond high school, and making sure that you have the information to be able to provide to them. So, if we don't, like I said, these were, several measures where we were expecting a lot of emission reductions. There was I pretty much hit on the majority of the bullet points that are on here. The biggest thing is just federal and state actions impacting mobile source reduction efforts. And that also applies to things like locomotives and rail car switchers. The state had planned on adopting rules and regulations in regards to those, and with the current administration, those rules have basically been put on hold for the time being. So that now, it's I think there's still opportunity. We're still engaging. We're talking with locomotive companies well, not locomotive companies. We're talking to the user of those, the transport companies, in regards to opportunities to do change outs, because there is newer technology out there that I think outside of emissions, there's other benefits to transitioning. So I think there's still some interest, but I just don't think it's near term. It's not something that we're going to be able to bring projects back to the CSC in the next 6-8 months and be like, okay, this thing's ready to go. It's further out there. So the big question is, where do we have emissions and where do we have opportunities for getting emission reductions? And one of the ones that we looked at was agricultural equipment. It's still a lot of equipment out there that is aging, that's older, that's higher polluting, doesn't have regulations on the book in regards to needing to transition. I know many of you know this. It's no secret that a lot of industry throughout the country is hurting right now. So in terms of ag farmers, if we were to ask them to do the change out on their own, that's probably very challenging. And probably the only way it would happen right now is if there was some type of incentive to help them make those transitions. Every piece of equipment out there that we get, there's just a lot of emission reductions that are associated with it. Almost all the equipment is diesel. And so you're getting rid of diesel particulate matter, which we talked a lot about here, that it's one of the most, highly toxic, chemical compounds that you typically find in communities. And so, having opportunities to significantly reduce that has a lot of potential health benefits. So one of the terms that we use for in looking at emission reductions is what we call cost benefit, cost effectiveness. And what does that mean? It means in terms of how much pollution we get rid of versus how much it costs to get rid of it. And the more cost effective it means, it's cheaper to get rid of more emissions. So the more cost effective something is, the better type of project it is in terms of getting just emission reductions. We did some inventorying of how many tractors are out there within close vicinity of the Fresno area, which does impact the air quality within the boundary. And I'll show that in the next few slides. But then once again, there's also at this time no regulatory requirements. There's nothing on the horizon. So if we wanted to get those emission reductions, I think there's a great opportunity. I think there's desire to do it. If we're looking at getting a lot of near term, right now emission reductions, this is probably one of the ones that we could do it. So on this slide, it's basically showing the boundary in the middle, and then kind of that inner blue circle is a 1 mile from the epicenter of the boundary. And then the lighter blue is 3 miles, and then the one outside that is 7 miles. And so what we're kind of referring this to is an emission reduction benefit zone. And it's basically looking at areas that we know impact the air quality within the boundary, but that we haven't looked at to fund projects within that area previously. Now we've done it in some other communities, but not in the South Central community. And I know this is a new concept, and so that's once again, it's just we're talking about it right now. Want to get your feedback. I know it's novel, it's new, but hopefully everybody understands the reason why we're talking about this is really about factors that were outside of everybody's control, and so we're trying to make the best of the situation in terms of what we can do to improve air quality. So kind of thinking back, so within the boundary, we have about 16 projects that we could potentially fund. And just from those 16 projects, you'd be able to get like 40 tons of emission reductions, 33 tons of nitrogen oxide emissions, 1.92 PM emissions. Now, a portion of that is diesel particulate matter, once again, which is that really cancer-causing type compound. The 1 to 3 boundary, there's roughly about 100 projects. And from that, we could get about 249 tons of total emission reductions. And then, 7 miles, it's 311. Cumulatively, if we were to say like do it all, it'd be about 600. That's a lot. That's in terms of emission reductions. That's just really, really significant. So, in an effort to always be upfront and provide everybody with the information. So the top line were the estimated emission reductions in the SERP only from the district measures. So this is not including the CARB measures where we know that there's going to be a significant emissions reduction shortfall from what was proposed by them in the South Central Emission Reduction Program, which estimate it's probably in excess of 1,000 tons. So I just showed you like replacing all those tractors, we get you about 600. Those other mobile source that we're not going to get is probably going to be at least 1,000. And so that's just, we were all really counting on getting those emission reductions because of all the health benefits that they were going to have as a result of that. Where we're at right now, we're about 106 tons of emission reduction. That's how significant, like some of those other ones that I talked about that we're not seeing the participation from it. We're doing much better in in terms of PM 2.5, really where we're seeing that real shortfall is in the nitrogen oxide. That's your combustion sources. And so the only way you get those emission reductions is through those replacing the combustion sources with cleaner equipment. If we were to look at tractors, that gets us over where we were before our initial estimate for emission reductions for South Central Fresno. And so you also see a bump in PM 2.5 emission reductions as well. So, if what we're trying to tee up here is we got roughly about $5.9 million from those measures that we talked about, the rail car switchers, the locomotives, and the semi-truck plugins and EV mechanics. And if we were looking to do that, then, and I showed you that one table that showed if we were to put money towards that, what those emission reductions would look like. So once again, mostly this is about feedback, and I know this is a lot to wrap our heads or minds around, and I know in trying to talk about this in a short period of time it's maybe not enough time to really think it through and what that means. But if people have some kind of initial reactions, definitely share that. If you want to talk more about it, you want more information offline, we have people available to talk to people anytime. So I see Ivanka has her hand up.
Hi, everybody. Um,
I'm sorry, Ivanka, I can't hear you.
okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My initial thought is that my eyebrow goes up with taking money going towards category 3 versus towards category 1. I'm not sold on the whole tractor replacement thing. And I think that's because I still have issues with, we don't know exactly where the money for the school buses went as far as where the buses are actually spending most of their time. So we got money for the hardest hit communities of diesel school buses to replace with electric buses, but we don't know if the majority of the time, if those electric buses are actually spent in 617, because when the school district came, they were just in a thankful mode of thank you for this money. It's been a great process. Air District washes their hands from it. The money's out the door, but the community is left not knowing if the communities with the dirtiest buses actually has a reduction in emissions, because we don't know. And at the time, the director of transportation for the school, he did not know where the buses were actually going to traverse on a daily basis. So that's a category 1 that I could see money going to somewhere there over the tractors, because the majority of the tractors are not within the city limits of the 617 boundary. I understand the radius. I understand the movement of air. However, I also know there's a lot of land use issues within 617 boundary that haven't been addressed by the Air District. And so the question is, how could this money be spent in a direction of direct impact to reduce emissions through the issues of all the land use problems that we're seeing within the city boundary that's not coming from tractors? That's really my comments on sending money to bucket 4 or bucket 3 into category 3. I do not agree with category 3 getting the money, especially knowing the backside and the political side of that is trying to point the finger at the administration at a federal level, when a lot of these Air District issues has been happening way before this administration came into play. And also knowing that the culprit of a culprit of a lot of the emission and impacts that 617 boundary area sees is caused by the area that you want to incentivize. I get that tractors have a major impact, but at the same time, are we going to see a direct improvement for the residents if you go that route of putting money into the same hands of the people that don't give a damn that we have the worst air? And then that is more of my points of why I do not agree with seeing this money go into category 3. The other thing, since we're on this topic of where we're headed in 2026 and 2027, Um, I would like to have and not, answer, not necessarily answered in this whole point of presentation of categories, but we are in the process of spending down. How does this all end, right? Where do the monitors go? Do they stay? Who gets the monitor van after our 5 years? Is there a coordination between CARB and the Air District moving forward for the areas that have spent down all their money? And just moving forward, I think the CSC and the community needs a better understanding of what is the strategy to really wrap this up. What does that look like? Those are standing questions that I hope we have a presentation on, because I'm not too sure, like, who's going to get our air monitors? Are they going to stay? Is the air district going to keep them in place on the sites that we've placed them so we can keep collecting data? Just those don't have to be answered right now, but I do think there should be a presentation on exactly what the endpoint of this process looks like. That's it.
No, I appreciate those that feedback, Ivanka. And I was at the Fresno meeting where the transportation director for Fresno Unified was there, and did share. I think the unfortunate thing, and we had several meetings with them to try to help them, guide them to explain things, and I think his unfamiliarity with the boundary caused some of the confusion. We had a list of the schools that it was going to that the school buses were going to serve, and my recollection, every one of them is within, it was basically just schools within the boundary. And it wasn't like magnet schools that were going to be using this. It was a lot of the elementary schools and others, junior high schools within the boundary that were going to receive the benefit of those electric school buses. And we can get some more definitive, more clarifying information from the school district, maybe in an email, and forward it out to the steering committee members. I know what you were saying, Ivanka, in terms of not wanting to shift funds, and I just want to, for clarification purposes, it's just because I don't want anybody to get confused. We were never talking about shifting funds from category one, which was the residential focusing ones. And
No, I'm
I don't think
saying I'll clarify what I said. I don't understand how shifting funds from category two to category one isn't what you're bringing to the table, and only bringing to the table, bringing category two funds into category three. Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that didn't get the tune-up program. There's a lot of direct impact incentive programs that you know, could be very impactful to residents. And that's not even being discussed tonight. It's about throwing out big buckets and big chunks into one category, whereas could some of this money actually go into the programs that are impacting and improving the lives of folks in
Yeah,
category
and,
one?
Ivanka, that's a good point, and we could put a slide together and show you, if that money were to go to there, what the NOx emission reductions would look like versus what it would look like if with tractors. I mean, it is. I understand that there is some benefit. There's just a huge difference between the two in terms of the amount of reductions that you get.
Yeah, and if you are going to talk about category three, you're talking about tractors. Well, what about the mulching equipment? Our air district is still allowing for ag burning instead of putting money more into, like, is it just the tractor, or is it going to be ag equipment, right? Like, what if you want to go that route of talking massive NOx and massive reductions, then what on the policy side is also being done, not just throwing money at the agricultural
Well,
tractors,
in
right?
terms of right now, I think we've talked about this here and in other places. In terms of ag burning, almost all ag burning has been phased out, with the exception of a few categories. One being like disease materials, where the ag commissioner has to make a determination that there's a threat presence that chipping would has the potential of spreading that disease, and so
Mhm.
there is still some allowance for some categories to be burned. There's other categories, state law still allows like things like, tumbleweed burning. And that's because if you try to shred that material or dispose of it in some other ways, it actually causes a spread of the seeds. And so that's why, state law still allows for things like that. Um, but yeah, your point is well taken. I get what you're saying. Eric, I see you got your hand up. Sorry.
No, I think the last time we had a mirror conversation of this was at Ted C. Will's, and we did the Air District had us do a small group activity where we broke off into two separate groups. And I think a lot of the discourse or discontention then is even starting to resonate, even so much as like a year and a half later. From the concerns that were brought forward around, prioritization of resources from some of these other buckets and the air district's priorities versus the community's priorities. Um, and so just to be mindful that I think the disposition is still the same. The conversation might not be as forward as it was then, as it is now, but I think the sentiments are still there. Um, and so I just think that, you know, echoing some of what I've heard from Ivanka, just around some of the priority areas, I think that there needs to be a greater conversation, and not a surface conversation on what those priorities and what this um, reallocation of funds is going to look like for the air district and what the priorities of the committee are.
Yeah. No, I thank you, Eric. And one of the things I appreciate, we've had, kind of going, way back, we've had a lot of difficult conversations, honest conversations. I think this is another example of, I don't think it's, I agree with you, Eric, that I think we're a much different place, a year and a half later than we were now versus where we were 5 years ago. And I think, we're more able to have, conversations and, in a hopefully what's more productive. Um, I just go back to, kind of the whole reason why Fresno was selected was because there was a lot of emissions in the boundary. And the goal of the program in the beginning was to find ways to work with the community members to reduce those emissions, hopefully to the maximum extent possible. If we knew of 10 other sources that would get those that hopefully that level of emission reductions, we'd be talking about those too. And so the only reason we're talking about it is, we're trying to think creatively on trying to meet the spirit of what AB 617 was intended, which is hopefully to improve, public health and, um, and we're trying to do our best to adhere and follow that. Dr. Curry.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that you mentioned, the initial idea about and the intent of AB 617. But I am also reminded that West Fresno initially was not included in those boundaries, even though we have some of the most polluted census tracts. So I think our concerns are well grounded, and I certainly support what's already been spoken in terms of concerns around accountability, specifically as the example of the electric school buses. It's wholly unacceptable that we would have lobbied to give Fresno Unified money to purchase electric school buses for AB 617 and then not have our students be the beneficiaries. That's unacceptable. That was a part of our commitment, and I don't see how we can be okay with allowing that money to go to some other community, because that's sort of the model. That's been the MO, is that profit and funds are raised on the backs of people who are in the most impacted communities. And yet when that money and revenue comes in, it does not benefit the people it's intended to benefit. So it's not acceptable just to say, well, he doesn't have an understanding of the process in order to know where the school buses ought to be and who they ought to be serving. I don't think we can tolerate that. That is outside of the way the money is actually supposed to be spent. So the concern around doing a similar pattern or making a similar pattern and providing revenue and access and incentives to those who are outside of the boundary seems just as if we are repeating a really bad pattern that, again, takes the profit, takes the revenue outside of the community, and allows other people to benefit from the pain that other folks are suffering. I don't see that this is a wise move, and allocating something without any accountability in it doesn't make sense to me. So I would love to hear sort of what's the plan to do something different, because we can't continue to do the same thing and expect a different result.
Yeah, Dr. Curry, you bring up a really valuable point, and that's the transparency. There's a high degree of accountability, for these funds, and I think we need to make sure that you see what that looks like. I think as an action item from this meeting, I think we need to get some specific information from the transportation director from Fresno to provide those assurances that those buses are serving the people that they were intended. And from my understanding, that is 100%. But I don't want it to be me saying it. I want the information to be provided to you so that you can see it and that you understand that. And yeah, so I mean, I think we'll definitely make that an action item from this.
Yeah, I feel like we do the same little dance every meeting, and that we have the same concerns around accountability and transparency. And that I've been personally, I know, asking about these school bus routes since Fresno Unified agreed to meet with us. And so I'm really not interested in sort of continuing this dance. So if the requirements are that they serve the district and that they be an AB 617, then if they're not doing that, then there ought to be some consequence, and then the money ought to be moved and the routes ought to be changed so that they actually match the requirements. And I don't think that's an expectation that's out of line, and I don't think that's anything that the committee doesn't expect, is that we would have that kind of accountability and we'd be able to say, yes, these electric school buses are servicing the folks and the children who are the most impacted. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So again, we've had this discussion before they received the money. We've asked the same questions about what are the routes. I've still not seen the routes and still don't have any guarantees. So this is a continuing question without an answer, and it doesn't feel resolved. And the fact that it's unresolved, even as as the money is moving on, that's just not acceptable.
So can we get this in the form of a motion? How would you like for us to proceed with this so you have clear direction from the committee?
Well, so we
I
have
think my point is that there has been clear direction. I really do think that's clear. And
Yeah,
so
I agree. I agree with you.
It's off.
I agree with you. So how do we institutionalize what you're saying into an action for the Air District?
So Eric, we'll put in the action items for this meeting, and we'll work with the committee on the specific language of that, and that is a commitment.
So I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm just going to say it again. We've done this same thing, and we've heard that same statement that it will be in the action items, and it still hasn't come back with any specifics.
Yeah.
So I really want to know what the routes are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's I'll take ownership of that. in hearing from the director of transportation and him going over it, that obviously wasn't satisfactory. And so, but at the time we thought that was, so we understand it differently now. And so we'll make the change that there's a desire from the committee to have a written listing of the routes that the electric school buses are using.
He knew he didn't have that at the time we talked to him because they hadn't even been planned because they were still just in their kind of trying out phase when they came to speak to us. They hadn't even finished their routes. So that's what Dr. Curry is saying about this action item is something that has just gone, I get that we're now on a quarterly basis of a system, but those are pretty much updates that should already have the school district should already have come back. And I don't want it to be a thing where they're not speaking for themselves. I don't want you speaking on their behalf.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the routes, it's about how much time they're spending in this area. If the majority of the time is spent collecting students from other areas to benefit and to benefit off, I'm sorry, to benefit off of the one school that has 10 out of 10, which is Edison, to bring students in from higher, less impacted areas into our district and give them a nice electric bus. So when they're getting picked up from their area, they're not seeing the quality of poor air because they have the electric bus. So the school district needs to be schooled and educated on the whole purpose. And if they didn't understand that, that's a failure on the air district's part for explaining the whole point of what AB 617 is. And if you guys can't do it, that's fine. Put them in front of us and we will do that and explain to them that they need to go back to the drawing board and figure out how those buses are spending the majority of their time and route in the 617 boundary. Because when we brought this to his attention last time, the first thing he started going off about is our magnet schools and all of that. And that's not the point. Magnet schools mean you're busing people in to this area. So that I know we're talking about category 3 and category 2, but this is another topic that if we put funding where it's not actually resolved and been in the interest of what community had expected and how the money was supposed to actually be used once it was in the hands of the school. So before we go and do that, I mean, with category 3 and ag, even if you present saying category 1 doesn't have the amount of emission reduction, there are other things that could be done besides just handing the money over to a tractor replacement that's not even in our boundary.
Thank you all. So just so that we're tracking for these action items, I want to make sure that we are accurately capturing this conversation and not just repeating the same action item. And so is what I'm hearing that, beyond what we have heard in the past from the Fresno Unified School District, folks are interested also in what the Air District is committed to doing to ensuring that the Fresno Unified School District makes those routes completely within the boundary in line with the requests from the CSC.
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at it, and the CSC members can definitely feel free to add to it. But I think a couple of them would be getting a written listing of the truck or not truck, the electric school bus routes for the electric school buses funded with AB 617 funds. And then we would then provide that information directly to the community steering committee members. In terms of accountability, I kind of go back to when we initially started working with the school district. We shared out what contracts look like for people that accept those funds. There are reporting requirements that they have to provide to us demonstrating that the equipment is operating in the areas that they committed to. And so, we could send out a copy of what that agreement looks like. We haven't received those reports yet. They're periodic in nature. So, but just to make people aware of what those commitments look like. Trying to think, there was something else. Oh, there was another commitment to, if the funding weren't to go to tractors, if we were to look at more of the items in category 1, what those emissions would look like, with the same amount of funding were to be provided. I think as another, additional information.
Just want to check if that sounds right to the CSC members, or if there's anything that you would add or change to the action items that Ryan just shared.
Yes. Getting a report from Fresno Unified about where they are deploying these electric school buses is one way, but if the requirements are that the majority of time and the benefit go to people in AB 617, why is that not just communicated directly so that it is a requirement and not optional? So, I mean, the school board can tell us where, the school district can tell us where they have currently deployed them, but it seems that the directive coming from CARB and coming from the Air Pollution Control District ought to be, what are the requirements? What did you agree to contractually? And are you meeting those? And if you're not, then you need to get in line with what is required. So getting a list is great, but that doesn't change anything if it's incorrect. So what are you willing to do in terms of providing more directives and more clarity around what is really what is required? And I think from the last meeting, when the person that was reporting said he really didn't sort of have an idea of where they might be deployed, I think, Ryan, you actually said to him, well, it is part of the requirement.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's a lack of information in terms of what needs to happen next. I think there just needs to be clarity around the requirements are X, and so you have to be in line with those. And if you're not, then there have to be some consequences. But getting a list, I don't think is going to help with moving it forward.
Okay. And Dr. Curry, maybe it's an opportunity if you have some availability, we can get that information from the school district, make sure it's kind of in line with what your expectations are before we look to share that out more broadly. And if it's not, to continue to work with you in the school district to get that level of information.
Well, I don't think I'm the only person that has a concern about it. So I don't have to be the only person that receives it. But I think the concern is that the requirements be met and that our students that are in AB 617 be the beneficiaries of the electric school buses. I think that's really the simple thing.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be helpful, but I don't think that there's any restriction in terms of other folks knowing what the list is.
No, and we just find that it's valuable, sometimes to work with CSC members, and we've done it historically for a whole host of things. Kimberly McCoy oftentimes helped us with air monitoring and other things, providing insights, and so that's what we're looking. Not because we feel that in any way that you're the only one interested. We think that the interest is across the CSC, but you may, I think you can provide a lot of helpful information to us to make sure that we get it right in terms of the information that the steering committee is looking for. Thank you.
And then this is Deldy, Ryan. And then just to
Hi,
clarify, hi, then all that information would come back to the CSC, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Everything we're talking about, and I know Liz is taking close notes of what we're talking about as part of action items. But yeah, it would come back. Everything that we're talking about is going to be shared out across the entirety of the CSC.
And these are there any time sensitive restrictions?
in terms of, I mean, and you know, I appreciate Deldy being here, and you know, there is, you know, in terms of funding, the legislature, I'm sure would like us to see us, you know, put the money towards the intended goals as soon as possible. You know, I got a sense from you know, different levels of legislature and others that you know, wanting to make sure that the money is continuing to get out there, that's going towards emission reduction and mitigation programs. So you know, I never want to say like, no, we're fine where we are right now. I think there is, you know, a clock in that it is ticking, and you know, so I don't. That's not an effort to try to pressure people in any way. It's just my effort of trying to be honest.
And I would just say, thank you, Ryan, for that. You know, our interest and the Air District's interest is that we collectively follow through on everything that we said we were going to do in the SERP. And as we have learned, some things took a lot longer than we thought that they would. But that's okay. It's not ideal, but we work through those things and we come up with solutions, and we follow what the SERP says. And that includes, you know, as the CSC using its decision-making process in the charter, when you all come back and with support and guidance from the Air District decide that maybe you want to make some shifts, as long as we're following that, then okay, you know, that we're on the right path. But our interest is in making sure that as many of the SERP strategies that are feasible, you know, that the CSC still wants to make sure we do them, and we do them in the right way with thoughtful deliberation.
Thank you, Deldy. This is Liz. So I'm hearing that, you know, there is some urgency, but of course still a commitment from CARB and the Air District to ensure that the SERP is implemented as intended, you know, even if it takes longer than the 5 years that was initially allotted.
Yes.
Appreciate that. And on the topic of time, I do just want to note that we are a little over our time for this agenda item. I'm not sure, Ryan, if there was anything else that you had in this presentation that you wanted to cover before we start to wrap up. And if there are other comments from the CSC, would definitely encourage that you raise your hand and let us know.
No, I'm definitely done. I appreciate everybody's time and the comments and the feedback. I think it was very helpful and important. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to pause for another moment and see if any other CSC members have feedback that they would like to share, but if not, you all know that this is not the only opportunity to share this kind of feedback, and their district is always open to having conversations outside of these meetings. Since we are running a little over time, I think I will transition us to our next agenda item, which is the air monitoring update. As you all know, in addition to the SERP, the Air District is committed to continuing the CAMP, the Community Air Monitoring Plan, and bringing forward these quarterly air monitoring updates to the CSC to keep you updated on all of the air monitoring that is happening in the community and making sure that you are staying up to date and that you have an opportunity to ask any questions about the data that you are seeing. We have a couple folks from the air monitoring team. I believe we have Brad and Sean here, as well as Anna, to provide some of those updates. I think I'm going to pass it to Brad and Sean at this time. I'm not sure if Brad has joined the meeting, but Sean, if you are here, feel free to begin the presentation.
I'm here. I just jumped in.
Okay, thank you.
Just wait for
Oh,
Nancy. Were
Ryan.
you going to do the slides, or did you want me to present?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Brad Dawson. Sorry, I did come into this meeting late. I was actually in another meeting for other monitoring efforts being done in the statewide, pretty much. But I just jumped in. My name is Brad Dawson. I'm the supervisor for our community air monitoring program. I'm also joined today with Sean Smith. He is our air quality specialist, and he is currently maintaining all of the monitors in the Fresno community. As the community has probably noted in the past, Anthony Espinoza used to be the lead specialist for this community, but he has retired. So Sean has jumped up and filled his shoes and is continuing with providing service to your community. Next slide. Sorry. There. Again, we're going to be going over quarter three, all the data that we have collected from quarter three. We're going to address the current community air monitoring plan implementation, review all that quarter three data. We're going to start with kind of an overview, a quarterly average, then down to a monthly average, and then to a 24-hour average, so we can kind of see how it's changed over this quarter. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll open it up for questions, comments, and any recommendations. And as you can see, we're going over the implementation. These are all the air monitoring sites that we have in the Fresno AB 617 area. We have deployed all the monitors into this community. There are a couple monitors as well, Foundry and Drummond. Those are permanent air monitoring sites. Those are regulatory air monitoring sites that are also included in your area. Oh. This slide right here, we're just kind of just a reminder of what type of monitors that we do have. On the far left of this slide is a PM 2.5 monitor that reads hourly PM 2.5 concentrations. The middle one is kind of a more robust unit. It does have some gas measurements in it, CO, NO. I think some of them have H2S and SO2 in it, depending on the sites, as well as paired with the PM 2.5. And on the right is our trailer that is at Malaga Elementary that has the most robust amount of equipment that we have in it. And again, we also have our air monitoring vans. These can kind of go out and be deployed into areas where a traditional air monitoring site can't be. There was some concerns based off of our last meeting of getting the air monitoring van just west of our Edison location. Since that meeting, we have gone out there. We have driven around and kind of looked for spots that would be suitable for the van. And in the next coming weeks, myself and actually Sean will be going out there and deploying this van. So if you're in that area, you may see the van in that area pretty soon. Just to kind of go over some of the things that we have been doing, we are continuing to conduct local air monitoring in the South Central Fresno community. We have fully deployed everything, as I mentioned before, based off of the Community Steering Committee's recommended network design. And we are going to be planning on pulling that van out into the community again as well in the upcoming weeks. And we are still collecting PM 2.5 and VOC speciation data. We send all that off to an independent lab and get those reports back. Usually they take a little bit longer to get those results back versus the air monitoring equipment that we have deployed that reports back hourly. And we always seek input from the CSC on our air monitoring deployment and analysis. And again, this isn't a bullet point, but I'll just highlight it again. All of our data is shared on the community's webpage too. So you can go onto that webpage and see up to the latest hour what the air is in your community. just a couple of summary points before I kick it off to Sean, and he kind of goes over all the fun data. Quarter three, PM 2.5 levels showed to be a little bit lower than previous years. We're talking microgram per meter cubes, like 1 or 2, but we are seeing that improvement. Daily PM 2.5 on average remains beneath the federal 24-hour federal standard. And again, as I mentioned earlier, all of this air monitoring data is available on your community portal. So when you go into your community portal, you look for the handouts, the agendas, everything for this meeting. There is an air monitoring tab onto that. You can click that and cycle through every one of the sites, and you'll get that data live. With that, I'm going to kick it over to Sean.
Good evening, everyone. As Brad mentioned, my name is Sean Smith. I'm one of the technicians that works on the air quality monitors throughout the Fresno area. So with this slide, we're going to be going over the averages, as Brad mentioned earlier, and kind of discussing those main bullet points he mentioned in the last slide. So on this particular graph here, we have the PM 2.5 quarterly average comparison. What this graph is basically saying is it's comparing the last 6 years for respective quarters. So this Q3 data being compared to other years Q3 data. So you'll see on the left side, there's the concentration. And then on the horizontal axis, there's the various sites. So we have Heaton, Madison, Roosevelt, for example. And then it's compared to nearby regulatory monitors, for example, Foundry and Clovis, which are in the hashed markings here. Inside the graph, you have the red line here. This red line is 9 micrograms per meter cubed, and basically it's used as a standard reference for the concentration that we'd like to be below. It's more of just a figure that we'd like to be at. And we try to keep all of our monitors, or we like to keep all of our sites as best as possible online so that we can measure the data. And as you see from year on, from 2020 to currently 2025, we have each quarter mostly getting progressively lower, going from 2020 on to 2025, and below that 9 micrograms per meter cubed. Next slide. In this next slide here, we have the monthly average comparison. So this is comparing the months of Q3. So it'd be July, August, and September. On the left side, we have the concentration again, and then we have 3 kind of columns for the different months. And then for our legend here, we have color-coded the different sites. As you can see, most of our sites are below that 9 microgram per meter cubed standard. For July, the exception would be Edison. For August, we have Bitwise. And then for September, we had 3 sites, near attainment, but they were slightly over. But as you can see from most of the data here, almost all the sites are pretty much below that 9 microgram per meter cube average that we'd like to get. Next slide, please. Finally, this is the last slide, and what it is the daily averages, and it's going to be compared to last year's data as well. So before I actually get into the data itself, it's the same kind of format. We have concentration on the left side, and then on the horizontal axis, we have the dates for the respective quarter. And we have in the middle of the graph, you'll see a little bit of green at the bottom. You'll see yellow in the middle, and you'll see orange at the top. These are basically references to our RAN network, and these are the levels that we'd like to be at. And what they pertain to is, if you look at the legend at the very bottom, it would be good, moderate, and then unhealthy for sensitive group categories. And for the entire quarter 3, we were able to maintain, and I should say quarter 3 for this year and the previous year, we were able to maintain below the federal 24-hour standard of 35 micrograms per meter cubed. And the reason I could say that is because the last year is the area put in gray. So if you look at the outline in gray, those are the maximums from the sites from the previous year of 2024. And then all the solid lines are our community air monitoring sites. And then the hashed or dotted lines are the respective Fresno sites that are regulatory, that are near the area. But for the most part, we've been able to, the entire time we've been able to be below the federal 24-hour standard in the moderate to good category. And then we're pretty much for the entire quarter below last year's maximum peaks.
And I'm going to kick in just to mention some data that we didn't highlight earlier. We did send out an email notification to the CSC earlier, maybe last month. Sean and our staff have been going out and have been doing calibrations to all of our PM monitors. That's just something that we have to do annually to make sure that all the instruments are tuned correctly. And so if you are looking at our websites and you see a monitor go down, it could be due to that it is undergoing a calibration. We don't push the live data while the calibration is in progress, because it is actually a zero calibration and the instrument should be reading very low and not accurate to the rest of the community. When we've done those calibrations, we do them one at a time. So in a network as large as Fresno, it takes several weeks for us to conclude, but we wanted to make sure that when we did these calibrations that we only did one at a time, so that way the majority of the network was always online while those calibrations were being done. And each one of those calibrations can take 3 to 5 days, depending on the time frame allowed to us. I just wanted to highlight that. Nothing on the data. The data actually looked very good this last quarter. And I think with that, we're going to pass the next slide off to Anna.
Hola, buenas noches. Soy Anna Stone.
Hello, good evening. This is Anna Stone from the Air District. I'm part of the outreach team and also communication. And I'm just letting you know how is it that the district is communicating about the changes of the air quality when we have those peaks of high pollution. We have different ways on how we communicate, and one of them will be just send the press release before knowing that we are going to have this pollution. And also the district is just posting on our websites. If you're not following us, please follow us. We post on Facebook, X, and also Nextdoor. And also we are notifying the health departments and also the schools. Next slide, please. And now we have some other examples on when we are doing these communications, when we have gusty winds or any fire. So when we know that the quality of the air is going to change, we just communicate that to different sources. Next slide. And next, just to remind you how to file a complaint of air pollution. Those complaints may be filed online, by phone, or just using the Valley Air app that is completely free. And these complaints are responded 365 days a year, and all your information will be confidential. And if you are just sending your information, everything is confidential, but it's also allowing the quality air inspector will call you back and will respond to what happened or the investigation. And the phone number is right here for the counties or Fresno County, 800-870-1037. And you can also go to the website, or you can download the app. And in that same app, you can also upload those complaints. And that's it from me. And I'm going back to Sean or Brad.
I'll take this. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we do have our community webpage that shows all of our air monitoring efforts in real time, not only just the PM 2.5 that we highlighted tonight. And then also there is the CARB statewide air quality portal called AQ View that you can use this link right here to locate all the AB 617 communities statewide as well. And I think that's it. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Brad and Sean and Anna, for the presentation. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, and I'm not seeing any hands raised, but folks might still be processing. Even if you don't have any questions about tonight's presentation, we also welcome suggestions for anything you would like to see at the next air monitoring update. If you have any specific data that you would like to see or questions that you would like answered in the future, would love to hear those suggestions as well. So I'll just pause for another moment and give folks some time to maybe process and think before we wrap up.
I just want to highlight too, probably our next update will be going over Q4, which will also be probably in 2026. So we will be having more data to recap the entire year of 2025 to show the annual trends that we have seen this current year. So once we have that new update, probably in 2026, we can share all that new data.
Thank you, Brad. I don't see any questions coming up, so I think we can wrap up our air monitoring presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. As always, and as I mentioned earlier this meeting, if anything comes up for you after this meeting, do feel free to send that feedback and any questions to the Air District to make sure that those questions get answered at the next meeting. So at this time, I think we can transition to our annual report update, and we're going to hear just a quick update from Nancy. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. This is Nancy. I am going to be going over the annual report. And so this is something that our team has been working on for a few weeks now. So this is just going to be the draft Fresno 2025 AB 617 annual report. And so this report highlights the progress in the community and the progress on CERP implementation over the past year. These reports do play an important role in updating the district, CARB leadership, and public on all progress that we have made together. Similar to last year, we did do a story maps, and so I'm going to go ahead and share that with you all. And story maps is really great just because it's a very interactive tool. And so this is something that our team has been working on, and it is currently undergoing translation. So once this document is available, we will be sharing it to you, the CSC, via email. And so this just highlights all the work that has been done in the community. And so I will just go ahead and just briefly touch over this. So we do have all 4 communities are going to be in this document once this has been all completed. So we have Stockton, South Central Fresno, Shafter, and the Arvin Lamont community that will all be in one single document. But today we're going to be focusing on South Central Fresno. And so we just have like a summary here that includes the topic about the CERP and Community Air Monitoring Plan and how it was developed. But what I wanted to show you all today was just this interactive feature here. And so as I was saying, that this is just highlighting the community's what's been going on. And so we just want to make sure that we capture everything correctly. And so this is why we reach out to you, the CSC, to ensure that we are highlighting all the community efforts. And so one of them is, just what's been going on around the community with urban greening and vegetative barriers. And so, as I was saying, this tool is very interactive. It has pictures, so you can just scroll through them. And it's a very fun visual way just to see what's been going on. And so if you keep scrolling, you will also see other topics such as funding reallocation with the community. And keep going. We'll also see our outreach efforts out in the community. And so this is something that we always encourage the CSC to let us know if there are any upcoming events. And of course, we will try and do our best efforts as long as staff is available to go out into the community and promote our programs and just educate the public. A highlight from our Fresno lawnmower trade-in events. And this just has a lot of information, how many lawnmowers were exchanged, how many people came in for the repairs measure, and also highlighting our in-person CSC meeting, which we have every year. And lastly, we always do show the tracking CERP progress and just have a little button right here where it takes you to the most recent CERP measure tracker. And so, as I was saying, this is going to be available to you all. We're going to be sending out an email, and just for those who receive already printed materials, you will automatically be getting this annual report. But for those who don't, you please feel free to respond back to that email, or we will also have contact information as to who to email and call. And of course, if you ever want to have just like a little meeting as to how to use story maps, I'm more than happy to set something up. And of course, for those who have my personal cell phone number, please reach out to me if you have any questions as to how to access these tools, how they work. And so I encourage you all, once you have this annual report with you, the story maps, to please just scroll through it. You're not going to break anything. Click on the links that are there, scroll through the pictures, just familiarize yourself with this format. And of course, this will also be available in a Word doc. So if you don't want to utilize story maps, we're also going to have a document available. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Nancy. This is Liz. I'm not seeing any questions. I know that was just a very quick update. Appreciate, Nancy, you shortening that down, just given the timing. But of course, as Nancy mentioned, this will all be sent to you via email, and everybody is encouraged to share feedback on, how this is resonating and whether what is reported actually reflects your experience as a part of the CSC over the past year. So I do encourage you all to take them up on that opportunity to provide feedback. And since I'm still not seeing any questions or comments, I think that we can transition to our standing updates. So as most of you, I think, know who join these meetings regularly, we take the time at the end of every meeting to provide agencies with the opportunity to share key updates related to the South Central Fresno CSC. As we hear from each of these agencies, we will pause for questions and comments from the group, and we will go in order of the agencies that are listed on the agenda. First, starting with the Air District. Are there any updates that you would like to share tonight? I see a no, so I think they shared everything that they had in this meeting. So we can go next to CARB, and I see we have Jennifer here to share some updates.
Hi, everybody. This is Jennifer. Thanks, Liz. Yeah, really quickly, I just would like to remind everybody that we have a consultation group meeting December 3rd. And I will go ahead and place that link and the information in the chat. Feel free to, yeah, check it out. And I believe they'll post more information on what will be covered later on as we get closer to December 3rd. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jennifer. This is Liz. So as Jennifer just mentioned, she is sharing some of that information in the chat. I just want to pause to see if there are any questions or comments for Jennifer or Carb. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So we can keep moving through our updates. And next up, we have the city of Fresno. And I see we have Greg here.
Hi, Gregory Barfield with the City of Fresno. I'm the Director of Public Transportation, not to be confused with the other guy you guys have been talking about tonight. Just a quick update. I know there's been a lot of interest with the Central Transportation agenda item. It was removed last week, taken totally off calendar, and cannot come back until it's properly renoticed. And right now, I've heard no timeline when I talked to the director of planning earlier today. So just wanted to kind of give you that update. Other than that, that's about all I got.
Thank you, Gregory. Appreciate the update, even though, you know, it might not be what everybody is hoping to hear, but appreciate you coming and sharing this
Well,
update.
I think being off calendar is
Yeah.
a good start, right? Maybe someone's
Yeah.
rethinking their attitude. I don't know, but I think that's a good start.
Yeah, thank you. I'll pause for another moment to see if there are any questions or comments for Gregory from the city of Fresno. Okay. I think we can continue to move through our updates, and at this time, after the agencies have had a chance to share updates, we'd like to open it up to the CSC to see if any residents or CSC members have any key updates that they would like to share with the rest of the group. If so, feel free to raise your hand or unmute or post in the chat. So I will just pause for another moment, and yes, go ahead, Eric.
Yes. I just wanted to share that I was selected by CARB to participate in their peer-to-peer design group. And so we've had a number of like meetings just to kind of recap what this experience has been like, more specifically speaking from the resident perspective and serving on the committee. And sharing feedback and what this experience has been like. So, yeah, super delightful. Thank you, CARB staff.
Well, thank you, Eric, for being part of that effort. We appreciate it. We have 5 more sessions to go.
Thank you so much, Eric, for sharing that update. And that's really exciting. And hopefully you can share some of what you're learning and hearing with the group at some point too. I see a hand up from Ivanka. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't get my hand up in time to ask Greg a question. Greg, I had a question about the Central Transport project.
Okay, I'll try.
No, you said that it had been renoticed, that it's been taken off until it's been properly renoticed. And when you use that statement, you were referring to the Central Trucking Transport project on Cherry
Yes,
Avenue?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Because I
Yeah.
was expecting to see it on the agenda review this Friday, like for
No,
next Thursday.
No, it's been removed from the agenda altogether with no time to come back, and of course it won't come back until it's noticed because it was set as a timed hearing.
Okay, all right. And for residents who don't know what this project is, it was a new trucking project that was in a half-mile radius on Cherry Avenue across from Orange Center Elementary School. So community of South Central Along with our support at Leadership Council, we have been following this one closely. So it is very much good news that this is a project that is being rethought and really looked at before it's just given the go-ahead right across from a school. So thanks for the update, Greg.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivanka, for the question. And again, appreciate the update, Gregory. And I'll just pause for another moment to see if there are any other updates from CSE members that you would like to share at this time, as well as any questions that you might have for any of the agencies who have shared updates tonight. Okay. I'm not seeing any, so I think we can continue through our agenda and start wrapping up the meeting. I'm going to take a moment to share my screen and display the action items. As folks who attend these meetings regularly know, we do like to take time at the end of each meeting to share these action items and give the CSC an opportunity to provide any edits, modifications, or additions to the tracker. Amy and I do take these notes and action items in real time, so it is possible sometimes that we can miss something or might not get it right. So we really do want to encourage you to let us know if that is the case. So give me one moment. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay, thank you, Nancy. The first action item, the Air District will share a detailed heat map representing the Clean Air Rooms outreach to CSC members, and CSC members are encouraged to send feedback to the Air District on opportunities for additional outreach efforts. The next action item, the Air District will provide a presentation on sustaining the work of AB 617 beyond the 5-year implementation, including whether air monitors will be sustained and how data will be shared. The next action item, the Fresno Unified School District Transportation Director will provide an updated report and presentation to the CSE on the implementation of electric school buses, including the routes of buses and explanation of who is benefiting. And the last action item we have here, the Air District will provide contract language previously shared with CSC members during electric school bus subcommittee meetings regarding accountability and reporting to ensure the benefits of electric school buses are benefiting the South Central Fresno residents. So again, I'm just going to pause and do want to invite any of our CSC members to let us know if anything was not captured correctly or if we missed any action items that you would like us to track. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So next up, as we continue to wrap up our meeting, I just want to share my screen again with our next meeting date. So as you see here, and as you might remember, we are meeting quarterly. So our next meeting will be Wednesday, February 11th in 2026. It is hard to believe that we are almost in 2026 already. And we look forward to seeing you there and hearing some updates on some of these action items as well. We also like to take some time at the end of these meetings to do some agenda setting since we don't have a formal agenda setting meeting. I'm not sure, Ryan, if you have any suggestions for what you would like to include on the agenda or if you would like to take some suggestions from the CSE beyond what we have heard in tonight's meeting.
Not outside what you included in the action items. I think there's some follow-up, from that, and we incorporate it into the SERP implementation updates. But yeah, would CSC members have suggestions? Love to hear it.
Thank you, Ryan. So I will just pause for another moment and see if there's anything else that CSC members would like to make sure they see on the agenda for February. Okay. Not seeing any hands, and I don't see anything in the chat. So I think we can continue to wrap up our meeting. And just want to thank each of you again for joining tonight. Thank all of our agency partners and especially all of the CSC members and residents who continue to show up and engage so thoughtfully in these meetings. I always like to say that it really is not easy to do the work that you all do, and it's very admirable that you continue to engage and show up in the way that you do. So just want to express our appreciation to everyone in this meeting for engaging in the way that you do. I'd like to pass it to Ryan at this time to close us out with some closing remarks.
And I think you did a tremendous job in closing out the meeting. And so just once again, thanks everyone. Great seeing all of you. And appreciate Deldy and other people being here tonight. Greg, I thought you did appreciate you being here. And as always, wonderful interpretation, translation, and facilitation. So thank you all for a great meeting.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Good night and happy New
Buenas
Year and
noches.
happy holidays. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches y feliz año.
Buenas noches.
Good evening.
Pasen
Good
una
evening.
buena
Happy
noche.
New Year.
Gracias. Bye.
Thank you, Diana and Tanya.
Buenas noches.
Good night.